What is going on, everybody? Kyle Murray from FTN Daily back again with the PrizePicks Prop Show. It is Friday, so that means I have some NFL picks for you. And we have a handful of them, actually a handful plus one. We have 6 picks for this week's NFL action. And we do have one for Monday, so it might be a little bit of a longer sweat, but it's 6 picks that I really like, and with new PrizePicks features like that 6x, 25x multiplier for a 6-leg pick. Hopefully you can use these 6 or a combination of maybe some of your picks and these ones. Whatever it may be, hopefully we can find some green here this week. Before we get into my picks, if you're a new user at PrizePicks, head over there, use code FTN, get yourself a 100% match up to $100. And in the comments below, let me know who your favorite picks are for this week. We're winding down towards the end of the year. Week 17 is here. Playoffs right around the corner. We will continue to have PrizePicks content for the playoffs and all the way up to the Super Bowl. So looking forward to continuing to do that on the PrizePicks side of things here on the channel. And to stay up to date with the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when the next video is coming. Helps us out a ton. We do appreciate all the support. Now, without any further hesitation, let's get into the picks. Like I mentioned, I have 6 of them, so stay tuned and bear with me here. But yeah, we have 6 picks that I really like. So we have obviously one thing I do want to emphasize here is doing this Friday morning / Thursday night. So there's going to be some injury news that kind of unfolds, and there's a couple picks here that are kind of intertwined with some potential news. So I would recommend staying on top of that, or maybe even waiting a little bit. But the thing is, it's kind of a double-edged sword here because these lines might move. I don't want to miss out on that. So me personally, I'm going to be putting them in. I actually already put them in, but if you are maybe a little bit more risk adverse and you want to wait for the injury news, feel free to do so. But pick number 1 is going to be one that I would like to see the injury news, but regardless, I think this line is just a little bit too low. I actually saw a line up here for Miles Sanders on some sports books that was actually in the 70s here. So for PrizePicks line to be at 62.5, it's going to be one that I automatically have some interest in. My model has him for 91 yards here, so really like this number here for Miles Sanders. Now again, the Jalen Hurts news is going to be big. He didn't practice Wednesday. He returned to a limited practice on Thursday. I would be pretty surprised if he played here. I saw a report that said they wouldn't even be sure if he's going to be fully healthy for the playoffs, let alone for week 17 here. So I would be pretty surprised if they played him, especially with how good Gardner Minshew looked. And last week with no Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders had 21 carries, and like I mentioned, looks like there's a chance he misses again, Jalen Hurts that is. Now Miles Sanders also popped up on the injury report with an injury, so I would recommend checking out on that. But again, he practiced on Thursday as well, so not something I'm overly concerned about. Appeared to just be a rest day. But Sanders is averaging over 83.5 yards per game in his last 5 games. And all the Saints have been fairly tough against the run at times this year. Opposing running backs have still gone for over 114 yards per game against them. And like I mentioned earlier, my model projects Sanders well above this number, 91 yards. That's one of the bigger edges that I've seen on a number that is still, a 62.5 line. It's still a fairly big number here. So you typically don't see these kinds of edges on numbers that are, a pretty normal number. Now for the next pick, we'll talk about it's a lower number, so it's easier to see those high edge percentage numbers because just the lower line. But with this line being fairly high, it's definitely a spot that I'm looking to take advantage of here for Miles Sanders, and I'm comfortable with this number, whether it's Hurts, whether it's Gardner Minshew under center for the Eagles. So that's pick number 1, Miles Sanders over 62.5 rushing yards. Pick number 2, Ian Thomas over 7.5 receiving yards. Might be a little bit more of an obscure pick here, but it's one that I do like here. Thomas has 11 plus yards in 4 of his last 5 games. He's averaging 13.5 yards per game in that time frame, while seeing 11 plus targets in those games, including 2 plus targets in 4 of his last 5 games. Over his last 6 games, in games that he's actually received 2 plus targets, he's gone over this number. So it's all about getting the volume here for Ian Thomas. And, with the Panthers being 3-point underdogs here, this might be a spot where they have to throw a little bit more than they like to. Obviously, we saw it last week against the Lions when they got off to the big start. They do want to run the ball, but, against Tampa Bay here as 3-point underdogs, they might be forced to find the air here a little bit more. And Ian Thomas over 7.5 receiving yards is the play. So that's pick number 2. Pick number 3, Ramondre Stevenson over 56.5 rushing yards. Now this one, again, would like to see some injury news and all that stuff, but Ramondre Stevenson practiced in a limited fashion both Wednesday and Thursday, so I'm not really all that worried about him. But Damian Harris is something that I would like to note here. Damian Harris he missed practice again on Thursday. He was on the injury report with a thigh injury, but it said that he missed practice due to a personal matter. So I would really like to see if it looks like Damien Harris is going to play or not. Again, I would guess not. He hasn't played since week 12, and if he's not practicing this late in the week, it sounds like he's not going to play. And if that continues, Stevenson could lead the backfield in a spot where the Pats could dominate the pace of the game here. And last week he only saw 13 carries, because they fell behind pretty quickly. And while the score kind of, closed a little bit, the gap kind of closed, it was still a spot where they were trailing for the majority of the game. Now, 2 weeks ago, in a fairly close game, he saw 19 carries and turned that into 172 yards, and that was all while he was limited with an ankle injury. So I'm really, optimistic about Stevenson's talent. And like I mentioned, with the spot where the Patriots could dominate the pace of game, with them being 3-point favorites, with the Dolphins looking likely to miss Tua this week, I really like this spot for Stevenson. I think he's going to be the clear-cut number one. Honestly, whether or not Damien Harris plays, and this is going to be a spot where the Patriots turn to the ground a little bit more as their favorites here, and they can kind of dominate the pace of the game. So, Ramondre Stevenson over 56.5 rushing yards. Those are the first 3 picks there. Again, let me know who some of your favorite plays are in the comments below. But let's get to the final 3 picks of the video. Allen Lazard, over 47.5 receiving yards. Lazard's gone over 60 yards in 2 of his last 3 games and 55 plus in 6 of his last 9. Now it appears that there's a chance that who now is, I assume, the de facto wide receiver 1, Christian Watson, might miss this game with a hip injury, as he's yet to practice this week. He didn't come back in the second half after he got banged up with that hip injury last week, and Lazard saw 11 targets in that game, and that was when Watson had 8 targets at half. So Watson appears to kind of be that number 1 wide receiver, but if he's going to miss this week, Lazard's going to step back into that role, which I really like here. And honestly, I think that even if Watson does play, he's likely to be limited, or at least have a chance to be limited. And regardless, I just kind of like this spot in general for Lazard, who's going to face a bottom 10 pass defense in the Minnesota Vikings here. And other Vegas lines actually have Lazard's number in between 53 and 55, so it's a pretty nice discount here for Allen Lazard. Again, that's Allen Lazard over 47.5 receiving yards. So really like that pick this week. 5th pick on the board here, Christian McCaffrey over 65.5 rushing yards. I've actually found a lot of success betting on McCaffrey. Obviously when he switched teams mid-season, there's kind of a little bit of an edge there at times with a little bit of uncertainty with his role. And then, even with Brock Purdy kind of taking over under center there was more uncertainty. And now it feels like after a down game last week where he ran for less than 50 yards, feels like this line is once again fairly low. But CMC is averaging 91 yards and 18.3 carries per game over his last 3 games with Brock Purdy under center, and he should continue to dominate the backfield touches here in San Francisco. Deebo Samuel's still questionable, not going to have Elijah Mitchell. Jordan Mason is actually also on the injury report. It's worth noting that so is Christian McCaffrey, but it sounds like that's really a non-issue. But the key here is the expected game script. Jarrett Stidham's going to start for Derek Carr, who's been benched. Who might not be in that Raiders uniform ever again there. So, but with this kind of being a scenario where Stidham is really being thrown into the deep end here against arguably the best defense in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers, they should really have no problem keeping their offense in a run first and in a positive game script for Christian McCaffrey. So I'm expecting to see quite a few Christian McCaffrey handoffs this week. Honestly, I wouldn't really be surprised if we saw 20-plus carries here for CMC. So you can also shop around for that line as well for McCaffrey on rushing attempts. I would like that number as well. So Christian McCaffrey over 65.5 rushing yards is pick number 5. And finally, let's go to Monday night. A big game here. 2 teams that have Super Bowl aspirations and 2 teams with a lot of fantasy relevant producers on their sidelines here. But Josh Allen over 1.5 passing touchdowns is the play here. Pick number 6. So Allen has thrown for at least 2 touchdowns in 10 of 15 games this season, and now it finds himself in the game with a total of nearly 50 points. And you say 50 points, and you might not feel all warm inside about that because we, especially over the past couple of years, we're finding 54, 55 point game totals and all that stuff. But keep in mind, this is a game in Cincinnati in what then will be January, and for that to be a 50-point total, it's a pretty impressive total. It's going to be the second highest on the week, so it's nothing to really scoff at there. It's a 1-point spread, so I'm expecting this to be a fairly close game, competitive game, one where the Bills are going to need Josh Allen to continue to carry him like he has all year. Over 1.5 passing touchdowns is the play there. So this might be a potential 2-day bet here if we're sweating out Josh Allen come Monday night, but looking forward to it regardless. Appreciate your support. Again, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know when the next video is coming. We've been doing NHL, we've been doing NBA. Pretty much we have everything covered for you guys here at FTN Network. So looking forward to continue to pump out these videos here on the YouTube channel. So please subscribe so you can stay up to date with all the newest stuff. Again, appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. And as always, good luck, everybody.